and welcome to the Listen Up Girl podcast, your daily LGBTQ news podcast covering LGBTQ news that you need to know. I'm your host, Zach Randles-Friedman, and today is Friday, July the 3rd, the day before the 4th of July holiday in the United States, and we have a lot to get into. But first, I want to give you a heads up. Today is my last episode for a few days. I'm taking the holiday weekend off, and we'll be back on Wednesday, June 8th with fresh news. So bookmark it, subscribe if you haven't, and don't go anywhere because we'll be back in your feed before you know it. But before I enjoy a hot dog and some fireworks, let me get into it because the news did not take a break. Our first story is the Supreme Court drops a bomb on trans student athletes. Right at the close of Pride Month, the Supreme Court handed down a ruling that would allow 27 states to keep their bans on transgender students athletes in place. The ruling clears the way for more than half of the country to exclude trans students from sports teams that align with their gender identity. That was a gut punch, and the timing, the final days of Pride Month, felt intentional. Whether it was or not, the message landed, and the fight for trans inclusion in schools is far from over. The decision affects real kids, student athletes who just want to compete, to belong to a team, and to be part of something. And now 27 states have the green light to say no. We'll be watching the fallout from this ruling, so stay tuned, and I will bring you more updates in future newscasts. Next, the Supreme Court takes up new parents' rights case on trans health care. Because one Supreme Court gut punch wasn't enough, the court has also agreed to take up a new case being framed as parents' rights issues. But don't let that framing fool you. The case could result in a runaway teen losing access to gender-affirming care. Think about that for a second. We're talking about kids who have already left unsafe home environments, kids who are vulnerable, potentially being stripped of their medical care from keeping them alive. We'll be watching this one carefully. It could have sweeping consequences for trans youth access to health care across the country, so stay tuned. Next, Russia sends nightclub workers to prison. So let's take this international because things are dark abroad as well. In Russia, a nightclub owner and employees have received years-long prison sentence under the country's LGBT movement ban, marking the first criminal prosecution since LGBTQ plus advocates were designated as terrorists by the Russian Supreme Court. So let that sink in for a minute. Running a nightclub, going to prison for existing in queer spaces. This is what happens when governments are allowed to label an entire community as terrorist without consequences. And it is a reminder that the rights we fight for here have life and death stakes for people around the world. Next, we have Budapest Pride, a moment of hope. So now for something that actually gave me some chills in the best way. Tens of thousands of people gathered in Budapest for the first Pride March since ousting Viktor Orban, with attendees describing the energy filled with signs of hope. After years, Orban using LGBTQ plus people as political punching bags, banning Pride, gutting protections, stoking hatred, the community in Hungary is finally able to march again. One attendee said, "Everyone was just so much more uplifted. I don't know about you, but I needed to hear that story today." Then we go to Istanbul Pride and the arrest. But the contrast couldn't be sharper. When Budapest celebrated in Istanbul, it was a very different story. Police detained 50 people during a banned Istanbul Pride event as LGBTQ plus demonstrators continued to gather in defiance of the Turkish city's decade-long ban on Pride. 50 people were arrested for showing up, for marching, and they keep showing up anyway, year after year. That is what courage looks like. And next, Republicans go after a trans girl in an Irish dance. And finally, I almost don't want to give this story any oxygen, but you need to know because it's happening. Republican lawmakers are demanding that an Irish dance competition remove a trans girl from competition, claiming she has a so-called biological edge, and they've misgendered her in public statements. They are coming for Irish dance now. There is no sport, there's no activity, there's no corner of life where trans kids are allowed to simply exist and compete without being a political target. It is so exhausting, it is cruel, and we are going to keep calling it out. And that is your very short news for today on July 3rd. It has been quite a week, quite a month, and honestly, Pride Month 2026 did not go easy on us. But we showed up every single story, every single day. Again, I'm taking a few days off for the 4th of July holiday in the United States, and I will be back and in your feed on Wednesday, July 8th, with everything you need to know. In the meantime, please subscribe to the Listen Up Girl podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It takes a second and it means the world. And leave a review, because when you leave a review, more people get to listen to this podcast. And share this episode with someone who needs to see it, hear it, and stay informed. Enjoy your holiday weekend. If you're celebrating, be safe, be proud, and I will see you on July 8th with more LGBTQ news. Thanks so much.